Hi everyone. Today we are going to discuss very interesting topic. Hopefully it will pass without holy wars, but we'll see. We are going to compare two most popular PHP frameworks. As you can see on the slide, it should not be WordPress and Magenta. It should be Symfony and Laravel. So in general, they are both pretty similar. For example, they both share MVC architecture. They both share routing system, which is, if not dig into details, is pretty similar. Both have ORM system support. Both uses template engines. Both have CLI, command line interface, which is also pretty similar without digging into details. Both have support of middleware, both use dependency injection, both support testing frameworks like for unit tests, integration tests, functional testing, and both have good security features out of box, and both of them have very good and interesting communities. But what makes the difference? The difference is in the philosophy. While Symfony emphasizes flexibility and modularity, Laravel prioritizes simplicity and ease of use for rapid development. And this philosophy will be noticed in almost every comparison of these two frameworks. Learning curve for Symfony usually is steeper because it have more extensive feature set and it have more configuration options and less configurations out of box, while Laravel is pretty beginner friendly because it has little bit less options and has a lot of uh, pre-configured options. As I said, both frameworks have active communities, but Symfony's ecosystem is larger and more mature. The simple example is that Symfony packages are used even in Laravel, in Magenta, and in a lot of different PHP-related frameworks and platforms. And because Symfony have more mature ecosystem and community, they generate a wider range of third-party libraries and components available. Performance is usually the same. In some specific conditions, Symfony can be slightly faster, but usually it can be different, depends on the developer and on level of code implemented. So Laravel follows the principle of convention over configuration, and as I mentioned before, providing default configurations and assumptions to streamline the developer. Symfony doesn't do that. It have very few pre-configured stuff. Almost everything you should do yourself, but at the same time, this gives more flexibility, but also require more time and work. As for tooling, both of them are pretty good, and both of them meet framework's philosophy. Symfony's tools are often praised for their depth and sophistication, and Laravel offering robust tooling, which is more streamlined and developer-friendly. Not developer-friendly, like to new developer-friendly, I can say. As for release cycle, Symfony has LTS versions, while Laravel updates more frequently. And as I think it is clear from previous points, Laravel is more like it is often lauded for its rapid development capabilities. It allows to build application pretty quickly, and Symfony is more flexible and it can be more scalable, but it may require more time for initial project setup. And analyzing community preferences, Symfony is popular more for complex or enterprise applications or some large-scale projects because of its flexibility and scalability, and while Laravel is favored for smaller to medium-sized projects where rapid development and ease of use are priorities. As for documentations, both of them are good, but Symfony documentation usually is respected for its details, for being comprehensive, and having a lot of different information for different levels of experience. Laravel documentation is also comprehensive, but I can say that it's more like more for beginners, and information in it is more basic. So when we compared Laravel and Symfony on high level, I want to compare some details which I met while I was working with both of them. For example, we can start with comparing their ORMs. Laravel has Eloquent and the Symfony has Doctrine. What's interesting about them? For example, Eloquent follows Laravel convention over configuration, and it's obvious because Eloquent was created specifically for Laravel. So it it makes assumptions about your database structures based to all Laravel conventions. This, of course, leads to rapid development, and of course, have a little bit less flexibility. Also, Eloquent uses the active record pattern, where database records are treated as objects. This makes it easy to work with individual records, but it can sometimes lead to issues with separating concerns in larger applications. Eloquent, of course, is easy to use. It's straightforward to learn, and in general, it don't have anything very complicated. You can also see list of supported databases. Sorry. You can also see list of supported databases. I'll not read them, just highlighted two more that are supported by Doctrine and not supported by Eloquent. And also, both of them support MongoDB, but Laravel's Eloquent don't support MongoDB, but for Mongo, it's not ORM, it's ODM, Object Document Mapper. But there is nice library developed by MongoDB. It's called Laravel MongoDB, and it adds ODM support for MongoDB to Eloquent, and it works natively. So it's good here. As for Doctrine, its data mapper pattern, it separates the database logic from the domain logic, and this can lead to cleaner and more maintainable code, especially in larger applications. But of course, as almost every point in this presentation, requires a little bit more time and knowledge. And doctrine use convention over a configuration over convention principle, where you have more control over how your database is mapped to your objects. But of course, you will need more time for initial setup and configuration. And as for flexibility, as a result of previous points, doctrine offers a higher level of flexibility, allowing you to map your database schema to your domain model in a variety of ways. This can be advantage for complex database schemas or working with legacy databases. And I think I forgot to mention, Doctrine is not Symfony specific. It's a fully separate project. Symfony developer just liked it, and it's integrated to Symfony and widely described in their documentations. So that's why it also is a little bit more flexible. I think you checked the supported DBs list, and as for MongoDB support, there is Doctrine ODM, and it works also natively with Symfony. So both of them are good working with databases. Just depends on your needs. But what about creating database migrations? This is also a moment which I noticed for me as pretty different. I would not tell you which one I like more or less. I'll just compare some steps, and it would be up to you which you like better. So in Symfony, you don't have Doctrine out of box. If you want it, you can install it. So once you installed Doctrine, you need to configure DB connection. After that, you need to create an entity class describing entity and adding attributes describing every entity, everything, describing everything you need about that entity in short. After that, you run make migration command, and migration is automatically generated based on entity class. Describing attributes in entity class can also be used not only for migrations, but for another stuff. And sometimes you can have like 20, 30 attributes on one property, but it's not the usual case. As for Laravel, Elocant is installed out of box, and Elocant usually is configured during initial project setup. So once you are thinking about creating migrations, you should have these two steps done. You're running make migration command, but it works a little bit different from Symfony. It's just creating you, how to say it, a template of migration file where you need manually describe which table and which fields you want to add. For Laravel, it can be it. You can create a database without creating model, but if you want to work with create a table from your code, you need to create Elocant model. You're running like make model command, describing model. Basically, you're describing just fields and which of them are protected or not. Also, you can add some more methods to make work with that model more convenient. So in general, as you can see, the framework's philosophy, I can say, keeps the same. Laravel offers easier start and little bit less flexibility. Symfony requires additional manipulations, but in result, it can save you some time with auto-generating migrations or make it more scalable, for example. So the next point, which I also faced by myself, is creating API endpoints. Both Symfony and Laravel offer powerful tools and features like for working with API endpoints. They, for the on high level, they are pretty similar. They both share MVC architecture. Both of them have routes, controllers, middleware, nice authentication and validation mechanisms. Both of them support creating REST and GraphQL endpoints and documenting them. But the main difference, as for me, is in documentation. And for example, in Symfony, the most popular is API platform. If you described your entity, which we talked about on a previous slide pretty well, you just need to add a few more attributes to that entity, and then API platform can easily generate your documentation. Sometimes it's difficult to add that attributes. They are similar to OpenAPI. Not identical, but it almost follows it. So you're describing that attributes and your documentation can be generated. As for Laravel, you need to use a package called L5 Swagger. It's very popular in Laravel, maybe the most popular for the REST API. It also follows OpenAPI, but the difference is that you need to go to each endpoint manually to every controller and describe in open, as for according to OpenAPI, every endpoint. As for GraphQL, you need to use another package called Lighthouse for creating endpoints, and one more package, Laravel GraphQL, for documenting. And documentation is not generated automatically. Usually, you need to run a command that will regenerate your documentation according to manually written OpenAPI blocks for REST or manually declared schema for GraphQL. So once again, Symfony is hard to start, easy to scale. Laravel is easy to start, hard to scale. So in conclusion, I can say that both of them are good. Both of them are pretty powerful. Most of them are most popular. There are a very big variety of PHP frameworks, and as Laravel and the Symfony, both very popular for a reason. I just tried to describe their advantages and disadvantages. And the choice between Symfony and Laravel depends on project requirements, development preferences, scalability considerations, also depending on a team, on team knowledge, on team maturity, and depends on a lot of factors. But in general, both of them are good enough to meet your requirements. Thank you for your attention.